Helen, my own accusations here are very bad. A Rorschach response of footprints to the top red on 2. Helen is referring to card 2 in the Rorschach ink blot test, on which the top 2 shapes, which are red, can be interpreted as footprints, the heels being at the very top. Jesus, no, it's all right. It's the arch of time. There isn't any. So it means. Helen wrote 3 versions of this principle. She first wrote, miracles rest on eternity, not. Presumably she had intended to finish that with arch of time. Then she crossed everything out but miracles and continued with, do not rest on the arch of time but on eternity. Then she crossed most of that out, leaving only miracles rest on eternity. The meaning is now clear. Miracles stand directly on the flat surface of eternity. They don't stand above it, on the arch of time. Thus, rather than being separate from eternity, at the mercy of the laws of time, miracles are based directly on the law and order of eternity. This makes sense, since their whole purpose is to bring in the laws of eternity to overturn the laws of time. Helen, I must say this is the hard way, and I'm sure this could have been done more directly. I don't see why I should get a message in a way that makes me miss the point and then have to go into a mental coma to get it. Look at the others, which are very clearly stated. I just thought I'd give you this one in a way you couldn't overlook it. It's an example of the shock effect, sometimes useful in language and in teaching, pupils whose attention wanders too much, students who won't listen. It compels attention. Now he finally responds to Helen's criticism, and at last we see the method behind his madness. He is still trying to get Helen to pay attention to the principles. He says that rather than making her go into a mental coma to get it, he is trying to snap her out of a mental coma she's been in all along. He is not being merely opaque. He is employing a carefully chosen device for compelling the attention of a student who won't listen. This seems to stop Helen in her tracks, presumably because she is quite aware she has been listening, and can therefore grasp the appropriateness of the teaching device Jesus has selected. And the device seems to be working. He, in fact, has her attention. And thus the miracle principle, unlike the other ones, promises to be one she soon won't forget. Helen then briefly remarks, so I got quite upset and snapped very unfairly at Jonathan, her husband Louis. And then it went on. But from this point, the whole tone of the exchange changes. And remember to thank Bill for me for his consistent all-out support. I need it because you won't listen to anything. But don't worry, the 3 of us will make it. We're nowhere near the final. By the way, this is an example of the point on cooperation. Miracles are an industrial necessity. Industry depends on cooperation, and cooperation depends on miracles. And don't underestimate your cooperation either. You don't listen, and you would save yourself a lot of pain if you did. But you did get through Chip over his misperceptions of Wally with very credible integrity. Jesus now switches to gratitude and reassurance. He thanks Bill for his support, which is much needed given Helen's resistance, and he assures it. He then cites Bill all-out support as an example of Miracle Principle 19. Miracles are an industrial necessity. industry depends on cooperation, and cooperation depends on miracles. The implication is that Bill's support of this project, the writing of the course, is an act of cooperation with Jesus. He then prays. Then his praise turns to Helen, and don't underestimate your cooperation either. Jesus then backs this up with evidence of Helen's cooperation with him. You did get Chip over his misinterpretations of Wally with very nice, credible integrity. This brief line bears some attention, especially since because we can reasonably assume that Helen's cooperation, like Bill's, is an example of miracle principle 19. The implication is that Helen performed a miracle. The context, as we see in Cameo 3, is that Helen can't stand Wally. Not only that, it's likely that she wants Bill to share her judgmental view of him, yet she thinks that Wally, instead, has Bill's unconscious backing. Into this stalemate comes another friend of Bill's, Chip, with his own uncharitable view of Wally. Surely this is the time for Helen to form an alliance so that together she and Chip can bring Bill over to their side. At the very least, it is time to privately relish Chip's negative perceptions of Wally and give these insidious seeds whatever small encouragement they need to survive and grow. But instead, Helen does the opposite. She helps Chip get over his misperceptions of Wally. This may have been more than Helen was trying to do. This may have been more than Helen trying to do the right thing. It may have been a gesture of selfless love for Bill, since this might be the incident Jesus referred to earlier when he said, "You make a maximal effort for Chip, and the only reason you did was because you loved Bill." Either way, though, Helen has made a definite choice to stick to her principles rather than give in to her basic instincts. This is why Jesus says she acted with very credible integrity. Jesus' praise, being based on a clear-cut example, is now as irrefutable as was his criticism that Helen, in a self-imposed mental coma, the effect on Helen is immediate. All her defenses crumble. So I said suddenly, perfectly defenseless, a little timid, and very surprised, "You mean you think I'm nice?" and burst into tears. And he said he must think so, really, because he keeps giving me everything. And he's not angry because I keep on rejecting him, but he is sorry because I suffer so much for no reason. He is really very nice about it. I told him I really do love him, but I have trouble about it, though I did mean it for a little while anyway, because I got embarrassed. And he said he understood very well and would keep on trying. "Bill, please don't let me down. This is very unexpected. I don't talk this way to men." All of Helen's armor has fallen away. The biting criticism has gone, and she's completely emotionally defenseless. This allows Jesus to tell her honestly how he feels about matters that lie at the heart of their relationship. He clearly thinks she's nice because he keeps giving her everything. He's not angry with her for rejecting him, just because she causes herself so much needless suffering. Then it is Helen's turn. She tells him she loves him, in spite of her embarrassment. It is a very tender exchange. All the more so because it follows what appears to be a real breakdown of communication. Then Helen drops her armor with Bill in her "please don't let me down." She is uncharacteristically exposing her feelings. Earlier in her notes, she says, "Men are supposed to give to me, but this is not reversible. When it comes to her relationships with men, she wants to be the one in control. But for the moment, she has dropped both her sword and shield with these two men in her life, Jesus and Bill, and for once is completely open and undefended."
Thank you. I need to. I still have reading to do. Thank you, everyone. My husband was graciously filling in for me, but we're not done, so don't go anywhere. He was helping me out here. I love you. Thank you. Day 7. Cameo. An example. I think I'll just lay it down. An example shock effect. In this cameo, Jesus is still trying to get Helen to really look at the miracle principles he has given her. So rather than just urging her to read and reread them, he raises the stakes and gives her a miracle principle in the form of a riddle. Oh, there we go. She gets angry and tells him he could have done this a better way. I don't see why, she says, I should get a message in a way that makes me miss the point and then have to go into a mental coma to get it. He then comes back with this perfect retort. You've been doing that all along. You have not even bothered to look at the others which are very clearly stated. I just thought I'd give you this one in a way you couldn't overlook it. It's an example of the shock effect, sometimes useful in teaching students who won't listen. It compels attention. Let me put my book on that. May I borrow that, Babu? Thank you. Here we see Jesus acting as a hands-on mentor, guiding Helen and Bill through the study of material he is dictating to them. His emphasis here on reading and rereading the text is priceless because it shows us exactly how he wants students to approach the course. Back to the riddle, though. It's an interesting concept to think of miracles as standing firmly on eternity versus caught on the arc of time. This is ideally how we would view all of our interactions, both with ourselves and with others, because without this understanding, we are far too easily distracted by whether we deserve an expression of love or whether it's been earned by someone else. Thus, deserving and earning can only be based on time because they're rooted in past behavior and fluctuate accordingly to perception. What we are left to assume, then, is that our own perceptions, by virtue of the fact that they are not eternal and cannot be the foundation for miracles. I feel like I missed something, but I'm just going to read that last paragraph. Thus, deserving and earning can only be based on time because they're rooted in past behavior and fluctuate according to perception. What we are left to assume, then, is that our own perceptions, by virtue of the fact that they are not eternal, cannot be the foundation for miracles. Day 7, Cameo 4, an example of the shock effect. Thank you, honey, for reading, and thank you all for joining with us. We love you.